Okay, so I need to address something. I talk to people all the time, and I don't think they fully understand what 2% or 3% of your portfolio actually does over a 30-year time frame, 20-year time frame, or 10-year time frame. I want to get into that because what most people don't realize is over 30 years, you could take something as small as 5% per year. That could be the difference between your 100,000 growing to 100 million or growing to 3 million. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? It's called the Rule of 72, and it's this simple. You take the number 72, you divide it by your average stock return, and that tells you how often your money flips. So if you make 10% per year, your money flips every 7.2 years. 100 to 200 every 7.2 years. 200 to 400, 7.2 years. 400 to 800, 7.2 years. But let me take you over to the computer. Let's show some examples and some real life numbers on what it means when I say you're overpaying by 2% per year, and you say to me, I don't care, I like him, I don't have time for it. Let's go take a look if you really have time to waste 3% per year or 2% per year. I assure you, after we get into this and we run through some examples, you'll never waste that 3% again. All right, Rule 72, let's head over. All right, so here we are with the Rule of 72. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the layout of what we're looking at here. So first off, we're discussing the Rule of 72. What does the Rule of 72 tell us about? It tells us how often our money will compound. So Rule of 72, okay, we got it. Here we are, we're gonna have $100,000. This is the amount of money that we're fictionally going to be investing. Here we are at $100,000. We're going to invest this $100,000 over 25 years. Now, flips, what does that mean? Well, the Rule of 72 is very, very simple. It means you take the number 72 and you divide it by the interest rate. So here we have 10%, here we have 20%, here we have 13%, 7%, and finally 50%. Now, we're doing this over 25 years, and here we are. 72 divided by 10 is 7.2 years. 72 divided by 20, which is 20%, is 3.6 years. 72 divided by 13 is 5.5 years. 72 divided by 7 is 10.3 years. 72 divided by 50 is 1.44 years. So money will flip every 7.2 years. Money will flip every 3.6 years. Money will flip every 5.5, 10.3, and finally 1.44 years. Here's our flips. We have 1 flip, 2 flips, 3 flips, 4 flips, all the way up to 18. Return. We return 10% a year. We return 20% a year. We return 13% a year. We return 7% a year. We return 50% a year. This is how many flips we get: 3.5 flips, 7 flips, 4.5, 2.5, and 17.5 flips. Now, let's talk about why this is important. You know how many times I've heard, oh, I don't care about that additional 2% I'm paying to an advisor. I don't care about that additional 3% a year I'm paying to that advisor. So let's run under a premise that the market averages 10% a year, right? It averages 10%. So if you saved that 3%, you wouldn't average 10, you'd average 13. If you hired an advisor, it's going to cost you around 3%. Maybe you're paying him 1, your mutual funds cost you another 1.5. And believe me, there's a bunch of other fees that go into IRAs. You're averaging about 3% with whatever advisor you have. So if you're paying him, then you're averaging 7%. Now let's talk about if you get work within a system that has the potential to not just beat the market, but 50% a year is not outrageous. That's only 4% a month. That's 1% a week. This is not a wild number. And wait until you see what it would do with your money if you were disciplined and stuck with it. So let's get into it. We average 10% a year. We're getting 3.5 flips. We have $100,000. So first flip, 100 to 200. Second flip, 200 to 400. Third flip, 800,000. Fourth flip, 1.2 million. So in 25 years, if you average 10%, on a $100,000 investment, and you simply allow that money to stay invested, you'd end up with $1.2 million. That's not bad. That's traditionally what you're going to hear out there. That's not a bad number. If you increase your 10% return to a 20% return, it's going to flip 7 times. 200 to 400, 400 to 800 to 1.6 million to 3.2 million, 6.4 million. You're going to end up with $12.8 million over 25 years if you average 20%. That's with $100,000. $100,000, 12.8 million if you're doing 20% a year. Now, let's get into just hiring an advisor. So if you don't hire an advisor, you're 10%, you're not, that's the average for the stock market is 10%. You're not giving him the 3%, you're keeping it. So now you're making 13%. That gives you 4.5 flips on your money. Let's look at it. 200,000 to 400,000 to 800,000 to 1.6 million, $2.4 million. That's what you end up with. Your $100,000 over 25 years is $2.4 million if you simply track the index and don't pay an advisor. Now, if you pay an advisor, stock market is averaging 10% per year. Going to cost you about 3%. So you're getting 7% of the 10%. It's going to give you 2.5 flips. 200 to 400, 400 to 600, you're done. The difference between paying 3% per year and keeping the 3% per year is 2.4 million or 600,000. If that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. So when you say to me that you don't care about 3% per year, well, okay, well, Derek, you can't add the 3% onto your 10%. Actually, you can, but let's just run with the argument. Okay, 13% to 10%. 2.4 million, 1.2 million. How much which one would you like to retire with? One, giving you, if you only spend 5% per year, that's it, 5%. In this one, you'll have 500 or 5% per year would be 60,000 a year at 1.2 million. If you have 2.4 million, that's 120,000 a year to live on at 5% withdrawal rate. With an advisor, 1.2 million, without 2.4 million. And this is the real reality, 600 to 2.4. That's the real reality. Now let's talk about what if you were able to get yourself 50% per year. And I am telling you that if you follow VPG theory, this is not an impossibility. This is 1% per week. You start with $100,000. It's going to give you 17.5 flips. Now this is really going to, it's really going to explain the compounding effect of money. It's probably, I mean, if this doesn't blow your mind, nothing will. Because you take $100,000 over 25 years, you average 50% a year, 200 to 400, 400 to 800, 1.6 million, 3.2 million, 6.4 million, 12.8 million, 25.6 million, 51.2 million, 102.4 million, 204.8 million, 409.6 million, 819.2 million, 1.63 billion, 3.276 billion, 6.552 billion, 13.104 billion, finally 19.624 billion. $100,000, 25 years, 50% a year, 19.624 billion. So when someone tells me I'm not interested in 50%, I'm like, I'm looking to do 1,000%. I'm looking to do 50,000%. That is because they have no idea what they're talking about. If you can do 50% a year for 25 years, $100,000 is $19.624 billion. What if you could do it for 8 years? $25.6 million. You're not interested in 50%. Give me a break. This is the rule of 72. You think that this is exaggerated in any way, feel free to look it up. This is the compounding effect of money. You stick with VPG theory and you stick with me. Our portfolio since September, when I began tracking it, and I've been doing this for 20 some years, it's up almost 20% now in a garbage market with no trend. You tell me what you think will happen. All right, that's it for the rule of 72. I'm out of here. As always, where money flows, price goes, and always invest your money wisely. I'll talk to you soon.